Hi everybody, I'm Karin Strand and it's so nice that you want to spend about 20 minutes together with me to talking about Norway. I'd like to first just give you a short introduction of myself. I am Norwegian and hence why I thought I'll do this webinar outside in the Norwegian nature. And I'm also an expedition leader and vice president of expeditions in Hurtigruten. I have worked for this company since 2001, and that's a long time to be working for the same company. But when your workplace is out in the wilderness, sharing amazing nature experiences with our guests in the most remote areas of the world, well, then it's a no-brainer. Let's quickly go over what we're discussing in today's webinar. Our today's agenda, we will talk about the Norwegian coastline, Hurtigruten's history, Norway's natural wonders, the Northern Lights, Polar Twilight and the Midnight Sun. We're going to also talk about Norwegian seasons. Yes, we have them all and they're beautiful. Our commitment to the environment and the Hurtigruten experience. It seems only natural to take you back to where it all started in 1893. Just to give you a short background of the geography of Norway, it's an extremely long and thin country. The inland consists mostly of mountains, forests and plains, and it's also the country with the second longest coastline in the world. That means that traveling by sea back in the days was the fastest way of transporting goods and people. But sailing along the Norwegian coast wasn't just a walk in the park either. It was archipelagos, it was fjords, it was islands and islets scattered all over the place. So with the seaway that was lined with reefs and narrow inlets, it was essential that a safe trade route got established between south and north of Norway. And just to make it even worse, maritime maps were unreliable at that time, and there were only 28 lighthouses in Nordland and Troms, being a very challenging stretch of coastline, making nighttime sailing very risky. That said, the Norwegians already did have some experience being out at sea. One of the main reasons people settled in this country more than 11,000 years ago was the rich fishing grounds along the coast. The world's largest cod stock is in the Norwegian waters, and that enormous fish stock has been the means of existence for people along the coast for millenniums, not just as food, but also as a trading good. The great thing about cod is that it can be dried and preserved without losing its flavor. This makes it perfect for export and shipping over long distances. By the time of the Viking Age, when these preservation techniques were already ancient and deeply embedded in the Norwegian culture, the dried cod was loaded into these famous Viking longships. It fed the sailors and made it possible for them to travel as far as they did. And it soon became Norway's first and most important product for export. And even if Norway found oil in the 1960s, cod and fish is still one of the biggest export commodities in Norway today. Enough about that. It was a sidetrack. Back to the Norwegian coast at the end of the 19th century. The Norwegian government really wanted to make a connection between the northern and southern part of Norway. So they invited shipping companies to submit tenders to operate an express route between Trondheim and Tromsø or Hammerfest, depending on the season. The owner of a newly formed company showed an interest for the route despite the dangers. This man was Richard Witt. So Mr. Witt and his friends, sea captain and navigator Anders Holte, took on the challenge of thoroughly mapping the sea along the coastline. Then, in 1893, Captain Richard Witt's steamer DS Vesterålen was brought into regular service and Hurtigruten was established. The first route sailed from Trondheim to Hammerfest, and the ports of call in between was Rørvik, Brønnøy, Sandnessjøen, Bodø, Svalbard, Lødingen, Harstad, Tromsø and Skjervøy. True Hurtigruten nerds will see that most of these ports of calls are places we still call on today. In 1893, the service offered several weekly departures, first from Trondheim to Hammerfest and later from Bergen to Kirkenes in only 7 days. This very important connection between north and south was named Hurtigruten, the express route. Hurtigruten was a substantial breakthrough for communities along its path. Mail from central Norway to Hammerfest, which used to take 3 weeks in summer and 5 months in winter, could now be delivered in 7 days. Our ships basically became an important part of the infrastructure in Norway, especially in the parts of Norway where there was no trains, buses and very few roads. Even today, when communities are cut off due to mudslides, avalanches or closed roads, Hurtigruten is the only means of transportation that delivers goods and foods to the shops in these areas. Hurtigruten started as a service to transport goods and people. And at that time, visiting friends and family, living other places, going to the doctor or dentist in a big city, shopping or going to funerals or weddings, our ships was the only way to travel for a lot of people. As I said before, the Norwegian coastline is long. And it's also blessed with some of the most diverse and beautiful nature in the world. Fjords, mountains, waterfalls, glaciers, forests and rich flora and fauna, Arctic wilderness and lots more. So even if Hurtigruten started as a transportation service, the tourists started to flock to our ships to experience all of this. The first Hurtigruten ship, DS Vesterålen, was a steamship with 40 berths, 25 was first class cabins and then 15 on second class. Then in 1925, the first ship with running water in the cabins was added to our fleet. She was named DS Dronning Maud, after the Norwegian Queen at the time. She was the first ship purpose-built for Hurtigruten, and I think we can all agree there's been quite a development since then, because today our ships really don't lack anything when it comes to comfort. So the gorgeous nature was one of the things that tourists wanted to see. But Norway is also blessed with some pretty cool natural phenomena. Most of these phenomena happens above the Arctic Circle. This is where you can experience midnight sun in summer, meaning 24 hours of daylight from May to July, depending on how far north you are, of course. The northern lights in winter are most common between September and March, and that is a truly enchanting experience. One thing is seeing the magical northern lights flickering over the sky, but the science behind it is also super interesting. The northern lights start on the sun, and then sun constantly produces a lot of energy. The solar eruptions on the surface cause solar winds that consist of high-speed electrical charged particles. When these particles crash with the Earth's atmosphere, they emit light in different colors, and this is seen as northern lights here on Earth. And in northern Norway, we have polar nights during the winter. This means that the sun does not rise above the horizon for a long time. It's basically pretty dark here for months at the time, and the further north you are, the longer this darkness lasts, which makes perfect conditions for seeing the northern lights, especially since we sail 7 of 12 days north of the Arctic Circle. Also, our ships sail away from disturbing lights from the cities, so I would say that sailing with us gives the best possibilities of experience the amazing auroras. A lot of people think that the amazing northern lights is the biggest bucket list thing about Norway, and I agree, it is amazing. But what I like the best is the Polar Twilight. As I just said, in winter the sun is below the horizon for quite a while. This natural phenomena creates a fascinating light. Even if the sun doesn't shine, the atmosphere bends the rays of the sun, and this creates beautiful light in blue, purple and yellow above the horizon. The opposite phenomena is called the polar day or midnight sun. That occurs due to the rotation of the Earth being situated this far north. And with the Earth tilting towards the sun does not go below the horizon for a couple of months. And when you visit Norway during the summer months, you will suddenly have loads of time to experience and discover Norway in daylight. And all that daylight has a side effect, at least for me. I never get tired and I have to force myself to go to bed. Another thing Norway is famous for is being the land of the fjords. And they are quite stunning. There are fjords in other parts of the world as well, but they are usually very off the grid. Also, they are mainly uninhabited. In Norway, people live here. So when you sail into the fjords in summer, you'll see lush and green hillsides dotted with small farms and sheep grazing. In Norway, we have had a total of 40 ice ages of varying durations. During each of these ages, the ice, meltwater and gravel have worn away the rocks and the mountains. The result of the ice age was deeper and deeper valleys. The glaciers, water and gravel eventually carved out these U-shaped valleys that the sea starts to flood into. And there you have it. That's basically how the Norwegian fjords were created. They are very narrow and have deep inlets with mountains all around them. So sailing into a fjord, you will be surrounded by steep mountains that plunge straight down into the water. Many of the fjords receive their meltwater from the glaciers. And in these fjords, you will see that the sea has a distinctive emerald green color. The largest glacier on the European mainland is Jostedalsbreen. And the meltwater is going straight into Sognefjorden, which is Norway's largest fjord. Other fjords receive meltwater from the snowy peaks that surround them, and this creates stunning waterfalls. We sail past or close to 100 fjords on our 12-day classic round trip. And we sail into many of them like Geirangerfjorden, Hjørundfjorden, Lyngenfjorden, Trollfjorden, Hjeltefjorden and Trondheimsfjorden. And with our expedition cruises, Lysefjorden and Sognefjorden, to mention a few. And there are several ways to explore these fjords with us. You can go kayaking, have a rib adventure, go hiking in the mountains, or experience the culture and history here. The 4 seasons in Norway are very distinct and each have their own unique character. Norway is definitely a winter wonderland from November to March. Most of the landscape is covered in pure and white snow, and this is the Northern Light season. Just to warn you, it can become cold along the Norwegian coast, but if you love winter activities and dress properly, Norway is a fresh and beautiful adventure. After the long and dark winter months, spring arrives, like now, and with it longer days and teeming bird life, sun and warmth. Well, it could be warmer. Well, warmth is maybe over-exaggerating a bit, especially in the north. What is fun about the Norwegian coast in spring is that you can sit on deck in a t-shirt and sunglasses when leaving Bergen. And 6 days later, you can do dot sledding in Kirkenes, where it's still full winter. Talk about contrasts. Then you have Norwegian summer. And man, do we love our summers. Even below the Arctic Circle, you'll have up to 18 hours of daylight. And the nature is lush and green. And you'll see the Norwegians going out and about. Norwegians have an almost obsession for being out in nature. We call it friluftsliv, like what I'm doing right now. Directly translated, it means open air living, but it's more about being outdoorsy. The concept is also linked closely to the right to roam. This is a law which allows people to walk or camp practically anywhere as long as you show respect for the surrounding nature, wildlife and locals. And then we have autumn, the season of colors. The Norwegian word for autumn is høst, and that means harvest. The range of berries and mushrooms in Norway is one of the largest in Europe. And with a little luck, you might just find yellow carpets of mushrooms and cloudberries. The temperature drops slowly through September, but you will still see people outdoors even as the summer climate recedes. Some say you really haven't seen all of Norway until you have experienced each of its seasons. The onboard activities, restaurant menus or shore excursions, change according to the time of year and the waters we sail in. You could say that each season brings with it new opportunities to experience our voyages an entirely different light, so to speak. Now I'm going to talk about research and responsibility. Since Hurtigruten has been a part of the Norwegian coast for more than 125 years, we have been involved with important research in Norway and in the other polar waters. This research spans from registration of polar bears on Svalbard and logging seawater temperature along the Norwegian coast, oil surveillance and even Antarctic research to simpler measures like crew and guests removing garbage and litter from shores. Not everyone knows this, but Svalbard is actually a part of Norway. And here we take part in the Norwegian Polar Institute's project for registration of marine mammals in the Arctic, called the Marine Mammal Sighting Database. The data improves our overall understanding of habitat use and seasonal movement patterns. Since 1935, one or several of our ships have been equipped with seawater temperature reading equipment, logging 22 measuring points along the coast. We ensure continuous knowledge about variations in sea temperature for the Norwegian Institute for Marine Research. In fact, the data from Hurtigruten represents one of the longest climatic time series in the world. The data is used to monitor and assess environmental conditions along the Norwegian coast. And together with Ocean Visuals, we contribute to continuous real-time oil surveillance along the coast. With a hyperspectral laser that is installed on board MS Minnasol, we can detect even the smallest oil spill while sailing or during port calls. Hurtigruten also collaborates with a wide range of scientific communities, both nationally and internationally, providing important knowledge and information about the Arctic and the Antarctic. We also run citizen science program on all expedition voyages. Our citizen science program is a collaboration project with selected research institutions where our guests contribute to research through sample collecting. In 2018, we took a bold move and implemented a complete ban on single-use plastics throughout our operations. Within 5 months, we managed to remove all unnecessary single-use plastic from our operations. Key to realization of this goal was the willingness, support and creativity shown by our suppliers, as well as the overwhelming commitment shown by our staff. We replaced plastic products throughout our fleet on all decks and in all departments. This includes using glass instead of plastic cups in guest cabins, substituting all plastic cutlery with metal cutlery, substituting plastic straws with paper straws, and reducing packaging for clothing and other goods and merchandise delivered to our ships. We will continue to work with suppliers to achieve our goal of zero single-use plastic on board, and working on reducing all types of waste and ensuring a higher rate of recycling. A key source for ocean pollution is microplastic. Part of our commitment to reducing plastic waste, we have even widened the scope from single-use plastics and identified other areas where we can take a proactive stance in the battle against plastic pollution. We stopped selling fleece clothing in our shops in 2018 in recognition of the documented impact of microplastics, and in addition we started to use washing nets for laundry, aiming to reduce our impact on the environment from microplastics and microfibers as a whole. We also sell these washing nets to our guests on some of our ships. We have also done a lot of other things to leave a smaller footprint. We planned conversion of several of our ships to run on natural gas and on biofuel. We built 2 hybrid-powered expedition ships, and we use shore-based power in several of our ports. We have been advocating a global ban for heavy fuel for many years. In contrast to many others, we made a conscious decision to leave out heavy fuel from our operations. In 2018, we became a member of Matvett, a Norwegian industry organization for the hotel and catering trade, aimed at meeting the UN Sustainable Development Goals targeted for reducing food waste by 50% by 2030. In 2019, we implemented new routines on board and invested in equipment to measure and sort waste more effectively. This included changes in ordering, storing, preparing and serving food to weighing, sorting and delivering food waste, and our aim is to reduce food waste by 30% over the next 2 years. Over the last 10 years, Hurtigruten has implemented more than 30 NOx reducing measures in our fleet. For example, by reuse heat from the engine's cooling water and exhaust to warm up the hot water tanks on board. The total annual environmental benefit of the measures is a reduction in emissions of around 680 tons of NOx and 19,000 tons of CO2. That's pretty impressive. So, just to sum it all up, Hurtigruten started as a transportation service along the Norwegian coast, then the tourists started to flock to the ships, and we started to develop, well, our product. Just to give you a picture, in 1952, Hurtigruten carried 500,000 passengers annually. In 2017, Hurtigruten had 14% of all commercial guest nights in Norway, meaning 1.2 million cruise nights along the Norwegian coast. From ships that only had just a few cabins and no excursions whatsoever, our ships today offer several restaurants on board, hot tubs, gyms and saunas. We have panorama lounges and expedition decks so people really can admire the view. Each ship has a crew consisting of chefs, service personnel, restaurant and hotel managers and technical crew. Most of the people you'll meet on board are Norwegians, and a lot of them grew up along the coast, like me. So if you chat with them, they might point out to you where they grew up, or maybe where their grandmother lived. All ships also have an expedition team or guides on board, like me. And we have one mission on board, and that is to enhance your experience by involving you and interpret the nature, wildlife, culture, natural phenomena you see during a voyage. Through guiding, storytelling and lectures, as well as excursions and hikes and friluftsliv activities, we will enthusiastically share our knowledge and passion with you. And just to brag a bit about our fantastic captains, every year our captains sail 660,000 nautical miles along the Norwegian coast, making them uniquely experienced in these waters. We also create work along the Norwegian coast. First, we started by introducing excursions along the Norwegian coast. This way people could immerse themselves even more in the Norwegian nature, culture and history. Today, we offer more than 90 excursions along the coast throughout the year. We always use local expertise to make sure our guests get authentic experiences. That's a lot of jobs for a lot of people. In addition, we have our local food concept, Norway's Coastal Kitchen. Most of the ingredients we serve in our restaurants on board, such as cod, scallops and Arctic char, are sourced straight from the sea. At 15 of our port of calls, we receive locally produced seafood, eggs, poultry, dairy products, mustard, syrup, salt, mushrooms, berries and vegetables from more than 50 different small-scale producers. Everything is delivered directly on board the ships, which significantly reduces food miles and optimizes the use of port facilities. This fresh local food is of course a treat for our guests, but it also enhances the travel experience, generates positive ripple effects in the local communities and inspires great stories about the places we visit. Our more than 125 years adventure along the Norwegian coast is almost unimaginable. I can tell you this much. We can't wait to welcome you on board one of our ships in Norway soon and show you our beautiful homeland. Hi everybody, and welcome back to this question and answer session after the webinar we had about Norway. We got a lot of good questions back from you, and I'm going to try my best to answer them here in this session. The first group of questions we got was around Northern Lights and when it's the best time to see Northern Lights, which is from October to March every year. The ports where the highest possibility to see Northern Lights is all the ports north of the Arctic Circle, so mainly from Bodø all the way up to Kirkenes and back. There were also questions about how difficult it is to learn the Norwegian language. It's a Germanic language, so it's not so difficult to learn for English speakers and German and Dutch speakers. The only thing that might take a while is to get the hang of the pronunciation and the dialects. Then there was a question about the story behind the red-colored houses we have in Norway. The answer is that during the 1700s it became fashionable in the cities to paint houses with a red continental brick house color. And the red and the yellow pigmented paint was also, in addition, the cheapest of paints. So the poor people on the countryside could afford to paint their houses too. And red was then, and a yellow color was also then the most affordable and possible ones to paint their houses with. So that's why you will see a lot of red houses, as that has become a tradition. And another tradition which is also very strong today is that barn houses are very often colored in red. So how was the passion about outdoor activities in Norway developed? Not easy to answer very quickly, but I'm going to quote Søren Kierkegaard, who was very fond of being outdoors walking, and he felt that it had a link to our mental and physical health and a sense of accomplishment and excitement combined with peace and quiet that for us now in Norway is being embedded as friluftsliv. And the culture has also a good ground for developing friluftsliv or outdoor activities because we have the law that gives us the freedom to roam. But what Søren Kierkegaard said was that do not lose the desire to walk. I walk towards my well-being every day. I have walked away from every illness. I have walked to my best reflections, and I know of no mindset so daunting that I cannot walk away from it. If one continues to walk so, it will all work, he said, Søren Kierkegaard. This is directly translated from Danish, so I hope I did it slightly justice. But it has all evolved, and the first time the word friluftsliv and this outdoor phrase was used was actually by Henrik Ibsen, the famous playwright, in the 1850s, and then it's developed from there. But it has been embedded with the Norwegians for a long time, way before the 1850s. So that was a very short/long answer to that question. I pondered quite a bit over that before I found the right answer to you, and I hope it made sense. What to wear in March when you come on one of our vessels? Well, it's a good question because it's spring in southern part of Norway, but it's full winter normally in the northern part of Norway. So it means that you will have a travel with us through seasons in a 5-day span. So winter clothing is a good thing to wear at that time. At least bring it with you, because it will get colder and full winter the further north you come. So we like to use what we call the layering system, so that you can always peel off. Better to have a layer too much than a layer too little. And you will often find temperatures in the north below 0 at the time. So hence the layering. And then there was a generic questions about how is the Norwegian culture. Again, quite difficult to answer in short, but I should try. It would be that Norway has a very strict egalitarian culture where values of humility, respect, simplicity and equality are a priority. As such, Norwegian people are not that vocal about their own achievements. People are valued for their honesty, respect and goodness without any need to judge. So, and family is of the utmost importance in our culture. I think I will keep it as generic as that without going into more specifics. That will take us all day. Question about things to see and do. That is a very large question and could take forever. I would like to point out 5 destinations. First, the fjords is which you should see when you come to Norway. Helgeland is a beautiful archipelago in northern Norway, close to the Arctic Circle. Lofoten and Vesterålen. And to be in Norway on Constitution Day, 17th of May, and see the children's parade with all the national costumes is a sight. And also to see Norway in winter. That's the 5 top things to be and do in Norway that I would recommend. When is the best time to visit? Depending what you seek. Long bright nights in summer, or if you want to see the Aurora, northern lights in winter in the north. If you want a taste of all seasons in Norway, you can come in spring, where you will see spring, early summer in the south, and still winter in the north. And that can be experienced in 5 days. Then we have a question about how long is the Norwegian coastline. There are several ways of measuring the coastline, and I'm going to give you a few of them. The direct baseline is 2,532 kilometers long. Then if you include fjords and coves and mainland, the coastline is 28,953 kilometers. Then, in addition, the coastline of the islands is estimated at around 71,963 kilometers. But Norway's total coastline is 100,915 kilometers long, which is the world's second longest coastline after Canada. Then we had a question which I found a little bit difficult to answer, but are Norwegian waters surveilled by Russian submarines? Answer to that is that it's hard for anyone without the highest military security clearance to know that. But there are regular drills in the Barents Sea from the Russian Navy, and we have our borders to Russia in the northeast. So whether they are there or not, that I cannot answer that directly, but I can say that we have Russia as neighbors. traditions in general, what makes a Norwegian a Norwegian? And if I could mention some recipes, and I will do that when I will put this question in two parts. So I will talk about what makes a Norwegian first, and then I'll answer the food questions afterwards. What makes a Norwegian? I think I will point out our close relation to nature and friluftsliv, as Henrik Ibsen mentioned in 1850s, and I think that defines us as a nation is the language, which is the definition of many countries, is your language. It also defines you. And what is my most treasured memory of sailing the Norwegian coast? There are many. But taking guests on hikes that few other than Norwegians do, I feel is a great experience to show them the sort of the backyard. So we have done some nice hikes up to Skageflå in Geirangerfjorden. Very inaccessible and great views, and yeah, I like that very much, to show guests some of the hidden gems. And the question around, do the Norwegians like tourists, or are we annoying? No, you're not annoying, not at all. We like you very much, and we are very proud to show our country, and we are very protective towards our nature. So we don't like tourists that litter, but we like and we love to have tourists here to show our country. So absolutely, you're all very welcome. So back to the food. What is typical food? There are lots of local recipes that are Norwegian, and I'm going to mention a few. One is called Lutefisk, which I think a few of you have heard about. It's dried whitefish, and it's made from aged stockfish, or dried or salted cod, pickled in lye, and it's got this gelatine texture. It's an acquired taste. I like it very much, but I can understand why it can be hard to like it. Then we have something called fårikål, and fårikål is a traditional Norwegian dish, and it's also considered the national dish of the country. It consists of pieces of mutton with bone and cabbage, whole black pepper, and often a little wheat flour in the broth. Cooked for several hours in a casserole, and traditionally then served with potatoes boiled in their skins. It's actually very good. I like it very much. Then you have fenalår, and that's a traditional Norwegian cured meat made from salted or dried leg of lamb. And it's a very popular dish in Norway, and is often served with other preserved foods at Christmas buffets or Norwegian Constitution Day. This is a big part of the celebration, is to serve fenalår, or this cured mutton. Curing time is normally about 3 months, but fenalår may be matured for a year or more. I have one in my freezer right now. Then we have another thing called svele, which is also known as lopp. It's a Norwegian batter-based cake. It's like a pancake. By size and texture, it might be bear some resemblance to American pancakes, actually. But used to eat this often in the afternoon coffee, or a snack between meals, or served with butter and sugar, or brunost, which is a cheese. And that's the last piece of food I'm going to mention, and that's brunost, brown cheese. It's common. It's a name of a family of cheese-related foods that is with whey milk or cream, actually, and it has this caramel taste. It's a cheese that has sweet taste, not salty taste. One of the last questions I got for mainland Norway was, what is it like to live through an Arctic winter? It's very dark during the day in the Arctic winter, but February has a comeback of the twilight period, and suddenly the days get longer and lighter, and you learn how to prioritize and make the most of daylight in winter. But the nice thing about not having the daylight in the winter is the chance of aurora, or the northern lights with the dark nights in the Arctic winter north of the Arctic Circle. So it's a lot easier when you have all these natural fantastic phenomena to look forward to. What would happen to the national economy if oil were no longer a part? Interesting question, and all modern Norwegians have a relation to exactly that. Politically, it's a goal to prepare the country and our private sector enterprises to reinvent and find other ways than oil-related industry for the future. So it's an important goal for the country to become less dependent on oil. Then I have 3 questions we got which pertains to Svalbard, which is also part of Norway. And why do you have to be armed when leaving town on Svalbard? Very easy. There are polar bear danger all over Svalbard, and you need to be able to defend yourself if needed. So that's the reason. Can you see the Berenberg volcano on Jan Mayen on any of Hurtigruten's expedition? Yes. If you go on a voyage with us from Iceland to Svalbard or Svalbard to Iceland, which we do have a couple of every year with one of our expedition ships, there is a chance to see the Berenberg volcano. However, the fog is very often encompassing the mountain Berenberg. So to be able to see the very top of it, we have to have a good day with little fog in Jan Mayen to be able to see the full scope of it. But there is certainly a chance, yeah. Last question was, how is it to live on Svalbard? I've not lived in Svalbard myself, but I have many friends who have done so or do so. And for some it becomes an obsession. You cannot be indifferent living in such a beautiful surroundings. Although I think living in Svalbard is not for everyone. You truly enjoy it, or you need to like cold climates with months that end with darkness, and days with the Aurora, of course, makes up for it. But if you can find the beauty of that and living in a small community, you have cracked the code and you would love to live on Svalbard. That was it. I think I've answered all the questions to the best I could. Thank you very much for joining me, and hope to see you tuning in for our next webinar.